For years, fans believed they knew everything about Sam Heughan and Caitriona Balfe. They watched them fall in love on screen, laugh through interviews, and share glances that seemed to mean far more than any script could say. But behind those smiles, behind the lights and the fame, there was a past, quiet, fragile, and hidden. When Outlander began, Sam was just an ambitious Scottish actor trying to prove himself, and Caitriona was a former model stepping into her first major acting role. The moment they met, something electric filled the room. The chemistry was undeniable. The producers saw it immediately, that spark of understanding that no audition could manufacture. From the very first scene they shot together, it was clear, their connection was real. Those early years were magic and chaos. Long days on the cold hills of Scotland, endless takes in the rain, rehearsing scenes that demanded vulnerability, intimacy, and trust. When the cameras stopped rolling, the bond between them didn't fade. They stayed late to talk about lines, comforted each other through exhaustion, shared inside jokes only they understood. Somewhere between fiction and reality, something genuine began to bloom. Not a relationship the world could define, but something even deeper. They were each other's anchor. When critics questioned Sam's acting, Caitriona defended him fiercely. When Caitriona struggled with the sudden pressure of fame, Sam was the one who called her after midnight, just to say, "You're doing amazing." They understood each other in ways no one else could, because only they knew what it felt like to carry the weight of Outlander. But the closer they grew, the more the world began to speculate. The internet turned their friendship into headlines. Every laugh, every lingering look became proof of a secret romance. Rumors spread faster than truth ever could. Sam and Caitriona had to learn the cruel rule of fame. Sometimes, the world wants to own your story more than you do. So they built walls, quietly, gently, out of respect for what they had, and fear of what they might lose. Sam stopped addressing questions about their relationship. He'd smile politely, deflect, or make a joke. Caitriona did the same. Yet, anyone who looked closely could still see it, that warmth in his eyes whenever he mentioned her name, the way her laughter softened when he was near. Then came the turning point. As Outlander exploded into a global phenomenon, both of them became household names. Fame brought opportunities and distance. Caitriona's career took her to new projects, new roles, and a new chapter of life. Sam dove into film, charity work, and his whiskey brand. But in that growth, something changed. The calls became less frequent. The late-night talks turned into short texts. Silence slowly replaced what used to be effortless conversation. Insiders from the early seasons remember the shift. There was a time, one crew member said, when you could always find them together, rehearsing, laughing, sharing a coffee. But as years went by, there was a sadness there, like something left unspoken. And then came the moment that no one saw coming. During a recent panel, while discussing Outlander's legacy, Sam's voice trembled for the first time in years. He spoke about gratitude, about growth, and then, his tone softened. "There's someone who believed in me before the world did," he said quietly. "Someone who stood by me when I had nothing to give back." The room went silent. No names were mentioned, but everyone knew. His eyes, glistening under the stage lights, told the story his words couldn't. When the moderator tried to move on, Sam paused, looking down for a moment before whispering, almost to himself, "I owe her more than she'll ever know." In that instant, the audience wasn't watching a celebrity. They were watching a man remembering something, or someone, he had carried with him for years. After the event, that short clip spread like wildfire. Fans replayed it over and over, analyzing his tone, his expression, the faint sadness behind his smile. Was he finally talking about Caitriona? Was this his way of acknowledging what they had, without saying it aloud? For nearly a decade, Sam had been the master of restraint, kind, composed, and loyal to his privacy. But in that single moment, his guard slipped. And for the first time, the world caught a glimpse of the truth he'd been hiding behind every smile. He didn't need to name her. The way his voice cracked was enough. Because sometimes, the deepest stories aren't told in interviews or written in headlines. They live quietly. In the pauses, in the silences, and in the tears we pretend not to see. And that night, as fans shared his words across the world, one phrase kept appearing in every comment section, like a collective whisper. He was talking about Caitriona, wasn't he? In the days that followed, Sam's emotional words echoed across social media. Fans dissected every second of that clip, every tremor in his voice. Some called it a confession, others said it was closure. But to those who had followed Sam and Caitriona for years, it felt like something in between, a goodbye wrapped in gratitude. For Sam, speaking those words hadn't been planned. It had slipped out, a moment of raw honesty from a man who had spent years hiding behind professional smiles. When asked later about his emotional tone during that panel, he simply said, "Sometimes the heart speaks before you can stop it." It wasn't the first time he had almost broken the silence. People close to him say that Sam had been carrying a quiet ache for years. It wasn't regret exactly, it was something more delicate. The kind of longing that comes from knowing you once shared something beautiful but fragile, something that could never survive the weight of the world watching. Back in the early days of Outlander, when everything was still new, there had been moments, small, unguarded ones, that neither of them ever spoke about publicly. A night shoot in the Highlands when the wind was brutal and she couldn't stop shivering. He had wrapped his coat around her shoulders, their breath visible in the cold air. For a few seconds, there were no cameras, no crew. Just two people standing in silence, realizing that pretending to be in love had somehow started to feel real. But life has a way of testing timing. Fame came, success followed, and so did boundaries. Caitriona, graceful and grounded, learned to build walls around her private life. Sam, ever the protector, never crossed them. He once told a friend, "I'd rather lose her to silence than hurt her with truth." Years later, sitting in that interview chair, his words about "someone who stood by me" were not meant as a revelation. They were a release, the sigh of a man who had carried too many unsent letters in his heart. Insiders say that Caitriona did reach out to him after the clip went viral. No statements, no social media posts, just a quiet phone call. Those who know them say she listened more than she spoke. He told her he never meant to stir up the past, that he just wanted her to know how much she mattered. She reportedly replied, "You never needed to say it. I always knew." It was the kind of conversation that ends not with closure, but peace. The next time Sam appeared in public, something about him felt different. Lighter, calmer, as if the burden he had carried for so long had finally eased. During a charity event in Edinburgh, a journalist brought up Caitriona again. This time, Sam didn't deflect. He smiled gently and said, "She's part of my story, always will be. We went through something together that no one else will ever understand. That's enough for me." No drama, no headlines, just honesty. For the fans who had built entire fantasies around them, it was both beautiful and heartbreaking. It wasn't the love story they had imagined, but maybe it was the one that mattered most. Caitriona, in her own way, seemed to echo the sentiment weeks later. During a podcast appearance, she was asked if she ever found it difficult to separate her life from her Outlander character. She smiled thoughtfully and said, "There are parts of Claire that belong to me now, and maybe parts of me that will always belong to that story, and to the people who built it with me." She didn't say Sam's name. She didn't have to. Behind the curtain of fame, the two had found a quiet balance. They might not share the same path anymore, but the bond remained, strong, silent, and eternal in its own way. When Outlander announced its final season, both posted their own heartfelt messages. Sam wrote, "It's been an incredible journey, with people who've changed my life forever." Caitriona replied, "What a ride. Grateful for every moment, every soul, every story." Their messages were separate, but together, they read like a duet. And maybe that's how it was always meant to be. Two souls who met in a story about love and time. Who found each other, changed each other, and then let the world have its version while keeping the truth tucked safely in their hearts. Sam once said in an older interview, "The hardest thing about love is knowing when to protect it with silence." Now, the world finally understood what he meant. Because sometimes the greatest love stories aren't about who ends up together. They're about who stays in each other's hearts long after the story ends. As the sun set over the Scottish hills where it all began, Sam reportedly stood quietly by himself after the final Outlander wrap. A crew member captured the moment, his eyes glistening, his face calm. Later, when someone asked what he was thinking, he smiled faintly and said, "Just remembering." And that's what this was. Not a scandal, not a confession, but a memory. A love that lived in silence, endured in respect, and ended in peace. Tears fell once, but they didn't fall from regret. They fell from gratitude, for a story that changed both their lives forever.